Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Trent. This is Rams Talk. Thank you for tuning in to another edition. Today, we're going to go over the cornerback position for the Rams. I wanted to talk primarily about Jalen Ramsey and a possible extension. And as I was looking into it, I just started thinking about what the Rams have been doing with the cornerback position in the last 3 years, and also the depth on the roster and the future salary obligations that they have with the cornerback positions. And it is actually quite fascinating because pretty much all of Les Snead's wheeling and dealing has really revolved around the cornerback position. I mean, there's been so much over the past 5 years, but so much. I mean, the secondary has been in flux tremendously. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So if you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. Welcome to the Rams Talk community. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't, please subscribe and join the community. And everyone who's watching, all the old school Rams Talk fans, old Ram fans, new Ram fans, St. Louis Rams fans, everyone, let me know what you think about the cornerback position and just general thoughts as I'm really kind of diving into all kinds of topics. Borotnik, I haven't forgotten about the UDFAs, so I will get into the undrafted free agents in a bit and then in another episode. But you can also find me on Twitter at Real LA Rams Talk and Instagram at LA Rams Talk. So let's just dive into this. So, I mean, so much has been made of the Rams salary cap situation, and it really is terrible. I believe if you type in LA Rams salary, I think in Google it auto-populates to salary cap hell. So that kind of goes to show you what's going on. And if they do extend Jalen Ramsey, which they have to do, and they probably will do, most likely will do, they'll have 3 players making north of $20 million. So they're allocating a lot of their cap to 3 guys. And we're not even talking about Cooper Kupp and all the other guys that they'll need to extend going into next year, and if they'll be able to extend them. So the first thing about Jalen Ramsey you need to know is that to re-sign him, they need to restructure Aaron Donald's contract, basically taking his base salary and shrinking it down and putting a lot of that money into bonuses and incentives and things like that he will get. It's guaranteed stuff he will get, but you're just changing the structure. So that needs to happen before they can really address extending Jalen Ramsey. Apparently both sides are on. Jalen Ramsey's not worried about it, so I think that it's a given. You do not trade 2 first-rounders and a 4th rounder for a year and a half of a player. So you have to extend him, and when they extend him, he will reset the market. He will make at least $20 million per year, and he'll have between $50 and $70 million of guaranteed money, which is crazy. That's crazy. So the thinking is that you have probably a top 2-3 cornerback in their prime, 25 years old, and this is a cornerstone cornerback that the Rams can build around for the next 4 or 5 years, right? If not longer. So that's the thinking. You get one of these guys, then you don't have to worry about the position, because this is a position the Rams have had so much crazy roster turnover. I mean, I feel like Tremaine Johnson was like the last guy that they had for several years that was a starter. And then you have Talib and Peters and Ramsey and Troy Hill, and it's just kind of been crazy since 2018. So that's the concept, is that you get a lockdown corner in his prime. Now, Jalen Ramsey, his performance was a little bit weird. It wasn't a typical year for him last year because he was injured or really injured for a little bit with the Jaguars. He had that contract. He had some issues with Marone, the head coach, wanted out. So the first half of the season, performance really wasn't there. But the second half of the season, I believe he was one of the top 2 cornerbacks overall. An overall defensive grade by Pro Football Focus in the final 6 weeks of the season. That other cornerback, so he was one of 2. The other one, that's Darious Williams. So when he turned it on last year for the Rams, he was brilliant. So I feel like going forward, he's a guy that you really can build around and just lock it down. So a lot of the conventional thinking in the NFL right now is have as many lockdown corners as you can, so then you can rush the passer and really not worry about the secondary. And I feel like with the Rams right now, that's kind of how they're set up. Their secondary is top of the line. So also going back to his salary, $20 million. You have two guys. So like the right now the number one highest paid cornerback is Darius Slay, and he was extended by the Eagles when they traded for him. I'll get into that in a second. Then right behind him you have Byron Jones was of the Cowboys, signed with the Dolphins. He's the second highest paid, and the third highest paid, Xavier Howard, also with the Dolphins. The Dolphins have two of the top three highest paid cornerbacks in the league, and if you combine their salaries next year, it'll be north of $30 million combined. So if you take Jalen Ramsey, let's just put him at $20 million. Right now, Troy Hill's making $4 million, a little over $4 million. He'll be a free agent. Let's say you re-sign him, and Darious Williams will be a restricted free agent, so you can match. Gives the Rams a little bit more wiggle room. But you can re-sign those two guys and Jalen Ramsey and still be in that range, probably much less than the Dolphins are paying for two guys. Then you still have David Long and Terrell Burgess on the roster, so you kind of round out 5 DBs at around the price that the Dolphins have two guys. So I saw a mock or a redraft of the NFL yesterday by Pro Football Focus, and they do the first 4 rounds, and this is like every player in the NFL using last year's standing. So the Rams had like the 20th-ish pick, and so they took with the first pick Cam Newton, but the guy had the Rams mock. He took Marcus Gilmore, the guy from the Patriots, then Richard Sherman, and then Adoree Jackson. So he had quarterback, cornerback. And I asked him why, and he said, because you figure out the cornerback, and that just sets your whole defense. So, I probably wouldn't take 3, but having 2 is great. So if Troy Hill and Darious Williams can live up to last year's performance, and you have Jalen Ramsey, then you're golden, because Jalen Ramsey is going to be guarding DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to be guarding, either Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk. He'll be guarding Lockett or DK Metcalf. So pretty much you're taking hopefully one of those receivers out of each of these teams away. So, it's very, very seldom as a Rams fan have you really thought, even with Marcus Peters, a little bit with Aqib Talib for like half a season, you thought like, wow, this guy can really lock down the opposing star wide receiver for the other team. So that's a great feeling to have. Now, when it comes to Jalen Ramsey, sometimes I question that trade in general. I love having Jalen Ramsey. I'm glad he's on the Rams. I mean, that's a if you want to start your team with a cornerback, he's one of like 2 or 3 guys. But when you look at value and you look at what the Rams have given up, the Rams have traded draft picks like candy over the last, I don't even know if that's a thing, trading something like candy, but they've traded them like baseball cards, okay? Like they're just throwing draft picks away. So the Eagles traded a 3rd and a 5th rounder in this last year's draft for Darius Slay. Now Darius Slay is 29, Ramsey's 25, but Slay is still a top 10 cornerback in the league. And they only traded a 3rd and a 5th, and they extended him, and he makes 16. He basically 3 years, $50 million. So they're not breaking the bank. So it's like it's a reasonable price, and they gave up a reasonable amount. Now, so would you rather have Darius Slay and have your first round picks for this past draft and next year's draft along with a 4th? Or would you rather have Jalen Ramsey and the 3rd and the 5th from last year's draft? So, and also paying less. So, I mean, that's an interesting dilemma, because guys they could have drafted in the first round this past draft, Cesar Ruiz, the center, Kenneth Murray, and Patrick Queen, the linebackers. So, it's not just would you rather have Darius Slay or Jalen Ramsey, but it's like, would you rather have Darius Slay and Kenneth Murray and a first round pick last year, cost controlled guys, Darius Slay making $4 to $5 to $6 million less, $20 million less in guaranteed over Jalen Ramsey. Is the difference between those two that much? So when you add all these things up, it makes you wonder. So essentially, Jalen Ramsey has to ball out. He has to be Jalen Ramsey. I mean, the first 3 years of his career, he was awesome. He was made All-Pro 2 years, first team All-NFL another year. He's lights out. But value for value, given where the Rams are in their salary cap hell, can you be paying all this money? And it's not just paying all this money, it's just having the cost control rookies and second year and third year guys on their rookie deals, filling out your roster. So a lot of people are thinking about Micah Kiser, Natrez Patrick, and Traven Howard, and Troy Reeder, at linebacker Kenny Young. Or would you rather have Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen in there as well, and Darius Slay? So, that's a big deal. I feel also the Rams were thinking it's not just about the play on the field, but it's the name Jalen Ramsey. It's the spark he gives the fan base, because he is not eccentric, but he's just got a lot of flair, and he's very confident, and maybe that is a jersey say, like, how many people are going to buy Jalen Ramsey jerseys compared to Darius Slay jerseys, right? So there's that element of it too. Now, going back to the cornerback situation for the Rams, since they traded for Talib and Peters in 2018, and then they traded for Ramsey, these are the picks they've traded away. This is their rotating, revolving door at cornerback. They've traded 2 firsts, a second, a third, 2 firsts, a second, a fourth, and 2 fifths. They got a 7th back in that Talib trade to the Dolphins, but they had to give him a 5th to get rid of him. So 2 firsts, a second, a fourth, and 2 fifths they've traded for cornerbacks, right? 2 of them are not even on the roster anymore. So they've given up so much draft, and they've received a 5th and a 7th. So they got a 5th for Peters, a 7th for Talib. And then if you think about when Tremaine Johnson left, that was also the year Sammy Watkins left. And so they got, I think, 2 third-round compensatory picks. One of them they took David Long with. So, I mean, that kind of they got a cornerback, not for free, but you know what I mean, in that draft. So at some point in time, you have to draft and develop cornerbacks that stay on your roster. So David Long, that's one of them. Terrell Burgess, that's one of them. Now, they didn't draft Troy Hill. They didn't draft Darious Williams or Dante Dayon. But those guys are undrafted free agents that were on other teams. And the Rams picked them up off of waivers, and they've worked out great. So that's another way. I mean, there's so many good NFL players that are, 5th string, 6th string, mainly because they're not the name top pick, but they're better than those picks. So the Rams need to really focus on cornerbacks and defensive backs that they draft or get as undrafted free agents or on waivers, and develop them and keep them at low cost, because you can't just keep trading their way for everything. You need their draft picks and being smart and getting these diamonds in the rough that have to happen. So, like I mentioned, Troy Hill, he made $4 million last year. Next year, he's an unrestricted free agent. Now, last year, he was Pro Football Focus's 20th highest ranked cornerback, and that's based off of qualifying snaps, coverage snaps, and 300. So he had at least 300 coverage snaps that he played last year. He missed the last couple games of the season with a broken thumb injury. And also, he didn't really come on the scene until Talib was traded. So he didn't have a full season, but he still played enough to qualify for some of these stats. He also had the fewest amount of receptions, 23 out of those 300 snaps, and he was one of 3 cornerbacks to have a completion percentage against him under 50%, and it was 45%. So that a lot of people when we first got Troy Hill, a lot of people hated Troy Hill, thought he messed up all the time, but he's really come around and developed. I mean, the players don't just barely play a couple games a year as undrafted free agents off of waivers on a new team and are all pro players, right? They're going to be cornerbacks that get beaten, but he really was coached up and turned it around. And funny, interesting fact about Troy Hill. So when Eric Weddle joined the Rams, Troy Hill was wearing number 32. So Eric Weddle wanted 32, so he paid him $32,000. Troy Hill had paid Troy Hill $32,000 to wear number 32. So Troy Hill then switches to number 20. Then they get Jalen Ramsey, and Jalen Ramsey wants 20, so he gives Troy Hill $20,000. So Troy Hill will give him the number 20. So basically, this is a note to all NFL players out there. If you're not a star name, pick a number that you think someone else might want so they'll pay you. And apparently the higher the number, the more money you get. So he made $52,000 last year just for giving up his number twice. Wow. That's like a full year's salary for a lot of people. So fun fact about Troy Hill. Now, Darious Williams. So Troy Hill, do we try and extend him now? Do we see what he's got? I mean, because if he overperforms this year or performs like he did last year, he's going to demand a payday, right? Is he banking on himself? Is he like, hey, I'm going out there, I'm not going to sign anything, and I'm just gonna let it fly and get my money where I can? Kind of like the Corey Littleton deal. I mean, Corey Littleton probably would have re-signed had the Rams given him a good extension. Who knows? Then you have Darious Williams. So Troy Hill. Real quick, Troy Hill was he made the Bengals squad, then he was waived, then he was on the Patriots, then he was waived, and then the Rams picked him up. And the same deal with Darious Williams, but he was with the Ravens, undrafted free agent, made the Ravens team, then he was waived, and the Rams picked him up. And he started the final 3 games last year, basically when Troy Hill went down, and even before that. And he had 2 interceptions, 12 tackles, and 4 pass breakups. And he allowed 11 catches on 17 targets, which is actually pretty good. And like I mentioned before, he was one of the top, he and Jalen Ramsey were the top 2 cornerbacks in Pro Football Focus's overall cornerback grading over the last 6 weeks of the season. And he only makes $750,000. He's a restricted free agent next year. So, whether the Rams are like, okay, we're going to lock up Jalen Ramsey, then we're going to if Troy Hill has a great year, we can't match it, so he's gone. And then hopefully we can hold on to Darious Williams. If he has a good year, then we have him and Long and Burgess, and then we can get someone else. So that's the deal. Dante Dion, he is also, I can't remember, but I want to say he's also an unrestricted free agent next year. So, John Johnson is a UFA next year. So essentially, in their secondary, they have David Long, Terrell Burgess, Taylor Rapp are like the only guys really with long-term futures. I mean, you need Nick Scott and stuff, but those are the 3 guys. So you lock up Jalen Ramsey. Okay, there you go. Then you're going to hopefully keep Darious Williams or Troy Hill. And then hopefully you don't have to trade every pick every year for someone, because they're giving them all these picks. We haven't even talked about the pick they traded for Brandon Cooks, the picks they traded for Jared Goff. Like, when's the last time they had a first rounder, it seems like? But Jared Goff? So at some point in time, the Rams really need to really just like lock it down on a cornerback. But they need to stop trading away their first rounders for cornerbacks, or tons of draft capital for cornerbacks. And anyways, those are my thoughts on that. I mean, maybe another episode I'll get into all the draft picks in the last 5 years the Rams have traded and received, to see kind of where they've netted out and see what that's returned for them. Also, when we talk about next year and having cap space and cap room for Jalen Ramsey and Cooper Kupp and John Johnson and Troy Hill and like all these guys, obviously restructuring Aaron Donald's contract will definitely help. but they're going to have to make some other moves as well. And one of them, I think, is a lot of people talking about Robert Woods, but he doesn't really make too much money. I think he's very integral to the team. I would say Rob Havenstein is probably the next guy to go. He makes around $8 million a year for a couple of years. And, you know, if Bobby Evans is the man, let's say Bobby Evans beats him out and Rob Havenstein is just on a downward slide, then Havenstein, that frees up $8 million right there, depending on dead cap and stuff like that. So anyways, for another time. But let me know what you think about the Rams secondary. Let me know what you think about the Jalen Ramsey trade in retrospect, given our cap situation and the value of Darius Slay and the draft capital that was given up for him. General thoughts about the cornerback market and just having top flight cornerbacks, like a suite of them. Let me know what you think. You can watch other videos, Rams logo, strength of schedule, or schedule prediction, draft recap. Watch them all, subscribe, you know the deal. But as always, thank you for watching, and go Rams.